You're watching CoastLife with Leah Rizzo and Charlie Sakaitis.
Charlie, did you do anything interesting over the weekends?
Yeah, my wife and I were hanging out a little bit, and we got out in the town, got out in the community some, went around, did some things. What about you?
That sounds nice, but on my weekend, have you ever walked into a story like that where you ask somebody about how their weekend was, only for them to jump back and be like, well, mine was all this glamour and glitz, and your weekend was tiny in comparison to mine. Well, it's apparently called Boomerasking, and not like boomers the generation,
Boomerang.
Boomerang. You ask the questions so it can come right back to you, and you get to outshine the person you asked. I think the general consensus about Boomerasking is it's
not great.
It's not great. It's rude. It's impolite. It's kind of all the worst people are like, let me ask you something about you just so I can talk about myself.
Well, the disingenuous part seems to be that you could just tell me about your weekend. Instead, you've devised this plan to sneak in what you want to tell me by first asking me something that you're not going to listen to begin with.
And that's also part of the general consensus, is that people would rather you just kind of be direct and say, you're never going to believe what happened to me this weekend. Like, you can set up a story to make it sound good. I guess even if it wasn't the world's most exciting weekend, you could say, oh, I did something really cool, or I checked out something really fun, or if maybe you went to dinner somewhere nice, and you can say, hey, have you ever been to this restaurant before? And that starts the dialogue a little bit without it sounding like me.
It's the same group of people that we all have friends like this. We've probably all done this at some point in time where you are in a conversation, but maybe you're just literally waiting for your turn to talk.
Yeah.
You're not actually conversing because you're spending the time they're talking, thinking about the thing that you want to say.
Yeah.
And it just comes off as not inauthentic.
Yeah, and I mean, like, sometimes you'll hear something in a conversation, I'm like, oh, wait, I have more to say about that. And then the topic changes, and then by the time you're like, oh, well, it's gone now. Like, it's forgot what I was going to say anyway. But they kind of break down the boomer askers into 3 different categories, and I'll pull them up for you so that I know I get them right, We want to be accurate here.
Always got to be
CoastLife.
accurate, especially when we're talking about authentic versus inauthentic things.
They have the Ask Bragger, and that's when somebody asks a question, disclosing something positive. This would be maybe, around the holidays, and you ask somebody what they got for their birthday or for Christmas, and they say, oh, I got this really cool gift. And you're like, well, that's nothing. I got all these brand name bags, and I got a boat, and I won the lottery, and I did all these amazing things for Christmas. And you're one-upping them. One-uppers are the worst, in my opinion. The second type is the Ask Complainer. And this is also one that can be hard to stomach after a while, because I feel like the Ask Complainer is often just overall a negative person. And that's the kind of person...
A negative Nancy, if you will.
Yeah, that you may ask, oh, how was your vacation? Well, everybody was sick, and it really wasn't that good, and everything about it was terrible, and there was no positive spin on this vacation I just took. And I feel like sometimes that can be true. But you can still
have a bad vacation, but honestly, there's probably something good you could tell me about instead of all the terrible things that happened along the way.
I'd rather be sad in the tropics than I would here. I'm just saying, sometimes you're like, I can be sad in the sunshine with nowhere to be. So I can.
All the people were terrible, but the beach was incredible.
The beach was amazing. Even if you missed your flight and you had to catch 3 different other ones just to get there. And then finally, they've got the Ask Sharer, and that's pretty much the, how was your weekend? Mine was okay. How was yours? Well. And I did used to have a coworker who would do that every single time you got in the elevator. He'd be like, how was your weekend? And he'd be like, oh, it was nice. I didn't really do much. How was yours? And he'd be like, well, my wife and I. And they would always go on this long
tangent
they took the dogs,
story.
They went to the pond,
you
the
were
park.
Really, you were doing the... Oh, yeah, yours is good, mine was good too. Keep it moving. You were not, it's the same as when people are like, how are you? And then somebody trauma dumps on you how bad things are. And you're like, I was just making a pleasantry. This is not an invitation to actually have a long-form conversation.
And I get that. And I know that there are some folks, too, that kind of struggle with navigating some of the sort of social norms and social politeness of it all, where it all is a little bit for show. And maybe if we were all a little more honest with each other from the jump, you wouldn't have to kind of do that little song and dance, and you could just kind of be direct and ask what you wanted, or tell somebody about your crazy, weird dream that you had because you thought it was fun to share. That's what I always do.
Or you could spend your day dressing like a magician.
I am dressed a little bit like a magician's apprentice today. I didn't know if that was going to come up in conversation, but I don't know what it is.
It's fantastic.
It's giving magicians eager apprentice that has the skill set, but maybe not like the study skill set. So there's magic power, but not enough book smarts.
By the way, let me take you guys behind the curtain real quick. I didn't just come up with that. Leah was talking about that in the break. I'm not just calling her a magician's assistant. That was her own.
I was thinking of starting a segment where I roast my own outfit.
It was her own take on the outfit that she was wearing. So I tried to fit it in there.
Maybe we'll start that on our socials, and you can let us know. Is that something you would think is entertaining? You can always let us know. team@coastlife.com. That's where you can chime in on the conversation. You can also always chime in on our socials, especially Facebook. That's where we hear from you guys a lot. But coming up on Coast Life, if you want to get your garden ready for all of the pollinators and all of the visitors that we get through the area, animal-wise, coming up in the warmer months, we've got a native plant sale to tell you about when we get back.